The period between 1790 and 1861 was a transformative era in American history, characterized by dramatic territorial expansion, the displacement of Native American tribes, and the growing tension between free and slave states. This westward movement, driven by a combination of strategic, economic, and ideological factors, reshaped the nation's geography and set the stage for the Civil War. The Louisiana Purchase of 1803, negotiated under President Thomas Jefferson, stands as one of the most monumental land acquisitions in history. This transaction between the United States and France not only doubled the size of the young nation, but also significantly shaped its future trajectory. In the early 19th century, the territory of Louisiana was controlled by France under the leadership of Napoleon Bonaparte. Initially, the United States was interested in acquiring the port city of New Orleans and its adjacent lands to secure access to the Mississippi River, a vital trade route for American farmers and merchants in the Western territories. The ability to move goods freely through New Orleans was crucial for the economic survival of settlers in the Ohio Valley and beyond. President Jefferson, recognizing the strategic importance of New Orleans, dispatched James Monroe and Robert R. Livingston to France with instructions to negotiate the purchase of the city and its surroundings for up to $10 million. However, geopolitical circumstances in Europe played a decisive role in expanding the scope of the negotiations. France, embroiled in conflicts and facing a slave revolt in its Caribbean colony of Saint-Domingue or Haiti, found itself in a precarious financial and military position. Napoleon, needing funds and desiring to refocus his efforts in Europe, offered to sell the entire Louisiana territory to the United States. The Louisiana Purchase was finalized on April 30th, 1803. For the sum of approximately $15 million, around 4 cents per acre, the United States acquired an expanse of land that stretched from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains and from the Gulf of Mexico to the Canadian border. This deal effectively doubled the size of the nation, adding about 828,000 square miles of territory. The acquisition raised constitutional questions, as the U.S. Constitution did not explicitly grant the president the authority to acquire new land. However, Jefferson, a strict constructionist, set aside his constitutional scruples for the pragmatic benefits of the purchase, justifying it under the treaty-making powers granted to the federal government. The Louisiana Purchase had immediate and far-reaching impacts on the United States. It secured American control over the Mississippi River and the port of New Orleans, ensuring that Western farmers could export their goods without foreign interference. Additionally, the vast, largely unexplored territories presented opportunities for settlement, agriculture, and economic development. To assess and map the newly acquired lands, Jefferson commissioned the Lewis and Clark Expedition. Led by Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, the Corps of Discovery set out from St. Louis, Missouri, in May 1804. The expedition traveled up the Missouri River, crossed the Rocky Mountains, and eventually reached the Pacific Ocean. Along the way, Lewis and Clark documented the geography, flora, fauna, and numerous Native American tribes they encountered. They also established valuable trade relations and mapped routes that would later facilitate further exploration and settlement. The expedition's journey covered nearly 8,000 miles and provided critical information about the Western territories. Their detailed journals and maps offered insights into the vast resources and potential of the newly acquired land, sparking the imagination of many Americans who dreamed of westward expansion. The Louisiana Purchase set the stage for the United States' westward expansion, aligning with the burgeoning ideology of manifest destiny, the belief that Americans were destined to expand across the continent. This acquisition paved the way for future territorial gains, including the annexation of Texas, the Oregon Trail migration, and the Mexican-American War, which further expanded U.S. borders. Moreover, the purchase and subsequent exploration underscored the importance of federal involvement in westward expansion. It demonstrated the ability of the federal government to negotiate significant treaties and undertake ambitious exploratory missions. However, the expansion brought profound and often tragic consequences for Native American tribes. The influx of settlers into the Louisiana Territory disrupted traditional lands and ways of life, leading to numerous conflicts and forced relocations. The Indian Removal Act of 1830, which authorized the relocation of Native American tribes to lands west of the Mississippi, was a direct consequence of the desire to open up more land for American settlers. This policy culminated in the Trail of Tears, where thousands of Native Americans were forcibly removed from their homelands and relocated to Indian Territory, present-day Oklahoma, suffering immense hardships along the way. The expansion continued through a series of treaties and negotiations. In 1818, the United States and Great Britain signed a treaty establishing the 49th parallel as the border between their territories from the Lake of the Woods to the Rocky Mountains. This agreement also provided for joint occupation of the Oregon Territory, reflecting the cooperative yet competitive nature of British-American relations in the region. The early 19th century also saw the emergence of significant ideological frameworks that justified American expansion. In 1823, President James Monroe articulated the Monroe Doctrine, declaring the American continents off-limits to European colonization. This policy reflected growing American confidence and a desire to prevent European interference in the Western Hemisphere. By the mid-19th century, the concept of manifest destiny gained prominence. This ideology held that it was America's divine mission to expand its territory across the entire North American continent. Manifest destiny provided a powerful justification for territorial acquisition and was a driving force behind American policies and actions during this period. The ideology of manifest destiny fueled further territorial expansion in both the North and South. In the North, the United States resolved its border disputes with Britain, culminating in the Oregon Treaty of 1846. This treaty established the 49th parallel as the boundary between British Canada and the United States, securing American control over the Pacific Northwest. In the South, the Republic of Texas, which had gained independence from Mexico in 1836, was annexed by the United States in 1845. This annexation led to the Mexican-American War, a conflict driven by territorial ambitions. The war ended with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which ceded vast territories to the United States, including present-day California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and parts of Colorado, Wyoming, New Mexico, and Texas. This acquisition significantly expanded the nation's southwestern borders. In 1853, the Gadsden Purchase further extended American territory, acquiring a strip of land along the southern borders of present-day Arizona and New Mexico from Mexico. This land was crucial for the construction of a southern transcontinental railroad. As new territories were acquired, the process of organizing them into states began. The number of states in the Union grew from 13 in 1790 to 24 by 1821. And to 34 by 1861. Each new state's admission to the Union raised critical questions about the balance of power between free and slave states. The Missouri Compromise of 1820 had established a precedent for maintaining this balance, admitting Missouri as a slave state and Maine as a free state, while prohibiting slavery north of the 36th parallel in the Louisiana Territory. However, the admission of California as a free state in 1850, following the discovery of gold and the ensuing gold rush, intensified sectional tensions. The Compromise of 1850, which included the controversial Fugitive Slave Act, sought to address these tensions but ultimately failed to resolve the underlying conflict between North and South. By the 1850s, the nation was deeply divided over the issue of slavery. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, which allowed new territories to decide the issue of slavery through popular sovereignty, led to violent clashes known as Bleeding Kansas. The Dred Scott decision of 1857, in which the Supreme Court ruled that African Americans could not be citizens and that Congress had no authority to prohibit slavery in the territories, further inflamed tensions. The election of Abraham Lincoln, a Republican opposed to the expansion of slavery, as president in 1860 was the final straw for many Southern states. Fearing that their way of life and economic interests were under threat, 11 Southern states seceded from the Union, forming the Confederate States of America. The era of westward expansion from 1790 to 1861 was a time of tremendous growth and change for the United States. The acquisition of vast territories through purchase, negotiation, and war transformed the nation's geography and fueled its economic development. However, this expansion also led to the displacement and suffering of Native American tribes and exacerbated the sectional tensions over slavery that would ultimately culminate in the Civil War. The dream of manifest destiny, while achieved, came at a significant human and moral cost, setting the stage for one of the most defining conflicts in American history.